how do I make the most out of today? Then at night, you could check in and say, did I do this?
And so it's kind of weaving in just how we've looked at approaching our own hero's journey.
Or can I say, I want to be a C- person here so I can be an A+ person there?
I could sit and complain about all the negative things that have happened in our travels, but I don't. Like, it's all happening for me to learn from.
Today, I had the opportunity to interview Robyn Robledo. What a fun person. She has a coaching business called Be the Hero Academy. It's a monthly subscription, and you can learn all these different little course programs within it. In our interview today, we talk about the power of writing down your story, the ability to look forward instead of backwards when we're navigating life, and stepping into possibility. What feels good? And keep doing more of what feels good, and understanding that, hey, if it's not working, that's okay. Let's reset. Let's start over. Let's try a different thing. Life is meant to be experienced. And I'm telling you, this lady is doing it at the next level. So listen in and enjoy our story, because I had a fun time and I'm sure you will too. Hey friends, I have my friend Robyn Robledo here today, and I'm so excited to share her story because she's a wild one and we love the wild ones that don't follow the norm. And just listening to her talk is going to inspire all of us to step into our own journey and live our best lives. So thank you, Robyn, for joining today.
Thank you, Jen. I'm so excited to be here, and we're going to get lots of people to defy the norm after listening to us talk, I think.
I'm in 100%. So I think your story is fantastic because you broke out of the normal path, lived in an RV, have 5 kids that you've done this with. And let's start with this part of your journey, because I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, this part where I am now, or what started that?
What started? Let's go with the start. Let's start at the start.
The easiest way to sum it down was that in 2012, I had finished having my 5th kid. And up until that point, our life was kind of traditional: big house, big mortgage, new cars, lots of tournaments and gymnastics meets. And I remember just being like, I got to do something for me. And so I started doing a yoga teacher training, and it was hard to leave my kids. Like, I was always with them. I had always homeschooled them and took them to work with me. And for me to go do something for me was kind of scary, but I did it. And then some days I drive to the teacher training. I'm like, it was in San Diego in La Jolla. I'm like, I'm going to bring a surfboard today, and I'm just going to go try to surf. And I look like a total kook, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just so happy to do something for me. And then I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then it was like constant evolution of, what could I do that's more fun today than, I just don't want to teach math anymore. This isn't that exciting. Let's go to the beach. And then we started camping more. Eventually I was taking my motorhome during the week to the beach to camp with my kids while my husband was at work, because at that point I wasn't involved in the business as much. And at one point he looked at me, he's like, we're here all the time and we have a mortgage. Why don't we just live on the beach? I'm like, okay, yeah, let's live on the beach. And for 2 years, we lived on the beach at right in front of a surf break. It wasn't a good surf break, but it was kind of a isolated surf break. So my daughter my oldest daughter, who's now 22, eventually would surf with me. And it was great, but then the landlady wanted her house back. And so I go to my husband, I'm like, well, we have this RV. We could just live in it for 5 months. It would be super practical. We'd save all this money. You have to meet guys at Practical. And he's like, yeah, sure. That was his go-to for everything. Sure, dear. If it means you're going to be happier with me, then great. And he just didn't really kind of think about what I think in my back of my head, I had already had this vision that I was going to drive across the US and see all the national parks. It's kind of traditional where you're you just think you have to check those things out. What if I hit all the national parks? But that year we were just let's just do a couple road trips. And I knew instantly when we were on those road trips, I was like, oh, this is what life should feel like. The open road, where can we go? And he was kind of he wasn't super happy, but he wasn't necessarily saying no to it. And then when the end of the 5 months came, he's like, I can't put you back in a house. You're, it would be like putting me in a cage. And
yeah.
So we long story short, we stayed in the RV.
with 5 children, like, let's not like, okay, like you're glossing over a whole bunch of pieces here that we need to slow down so people
Okay.
can digest. So one, what I love is that you like people look at us now and they forget that it starts as baby steps, right? And so what was interesting is like, oh, I started leaning into me and I did a yoga teacher training, right? Because that was something that wasn't fully selfish. I was still like teaching and giving, or and like I could hear the thought process there. And then you get a little more confident in, oh, everybody's okay when I take care of myself. So I'm allowed to do more of what makes me happy because everybody else is still surviving and being fed and we're good. And as you did that, you took more and more steps into what you liked, what was fun, what was comfortable. And that's how you set on the path. It wasn't abrupt dive in the deep end. We're moving in the like motorhome and here we go. Right?
Right. 100%.
Yeah. So I think that's like a key point, friends who are listening. When you start, you test the waters, like feel it out, put your foot in, see what you're thinking, and then just to let it kind of evolve and grow and see where it takes you. And a lot of times it takes us into this land where going back to our old ways would feel like being a caged animal. I mean, 100%. I think we all can relate to that in our own lives. Okay. So 5 kids in a motorhome though. How does this work? What are the mechanics here? How is sanity or sleep?
Yeah, the big thing was we had a class C that slept everyone pretty easily. And my kids were, at the time, my youngest was 4 and my oldest was 14. So 14, they're starting to get tall, but my husband's only 5'6", so I wasn't really worried about height being too much of an issue. It was like 1 kid, 2 kids on the couch. Well, actually, no, 1 kid on the couch, 1 kid on the dinette, 2 kids up in the cab, and then 1 kid ended up back with us in the back room. Logistically wise, I'll say it's not the best thing because we're all close, but it's really close quarters. No bedroom with a door. That was not healthy really for a relationship. So there were some negatives. The biggest thing though is we traveled because we were in a class C. It was easy to travel, just to constantly be driving, which I did a lot of. You can outrun weather for one, but you're always outside. So the kids, it's like you're really just using it to sleep and a little bit for cooking. And the kids are exhausted when it's bedtime. You know, they're outdoors playing every day. That was traveling in an RV. We've had moments where we live in an RV. I don't necessarily think living in an RV is the healthiest thing because it can be good that your kids are in a campground, but I'm not one for stationary RV. Like a lot of people like that's more of like, I want to minimize my expenses, and that's not my go-to. My go-to was to maximize my experience of being alive. What could be the fullest expression of life today? And because I was happy doing it, my kids were happy doing it next to me because they would just, I feel like, you know, our kids take on our behavior. So if my mindset is like, wow, what's in front of me? What can I explore? What can I do? They just took on the same like outlook on life. They still do. And so,
oh, that's amazing. So again, huge bullet here that we want to highlight, emphasize, underline. When you are fulfilled and excited and ecstatic about living, your environment reflects the same, and it gives your children and those around you permission to feel the magic of this whole entire existence. So I love that you connected into that and you started your day with, how do I make the most out of today? And then at night, you could check in and say, did I do this? And what can I do more of to continue checking that box?
a big thing that helped us in our travel is I've always included our kids in that process. After 2015, I'm out there surfing with my daughter, who would have been a freshman at the time. And we're just, you know, we're still kind of homeschooling, but not like uptight homeschooling. And I go, you know, you're a freshman. You're supposed to do geography. Hey, why don't you plan a gap year just for fun? Like, what would a gap year look like? And she puts together this whole huge PowerPoint presentation, and I see pictures of Europe. And so she's already liking surfing. We're into rock climbing at this point already. And there's this draw towards outdoor activity. And she's like, she shows me pictures of Europe, and I'm like, I want to go there. I'm in. And that like the next week, I just tell, hey, Victor, is it okay if my husband, is it okay if I book some flights to Europe? If he's like, sure, dear. It's always sure, dear. And I booked this. We did not have the money for it. I just booked one-way tickets there. And then as the months went on, I was able to stash away money so we could go. Well, we were going to go, but so that we could actually live there or for a while and get back home at some point. And while we were there was a good example of, so we only had a budget of about 165 euros a day, $150 a day. And I basically—
For 7 people.
7 people. This is outside of renting the motorhome when we were there and the airfare. But literally there's X amount of money in the bank account for 180 days, divided up. We have this much. And it was every day was, hey, how do you guys want to spend $150 today? Do you want a campground? Do you want to eat out? Do you want to drive to the tip of Portugal? Literally every single day was what would make us happy as a team? Why don't we, and not everybody's agreeing for the same thing, but for the most part, they had so much gratitude. They're whatever, they're kind of whatever you want.
I just think it's amazing that you had this. I mean, that's okay. So I'm going to steal this because I kind of use this for our Christmas. At some point you have it's hard to balance Christmas and the amount of money that you can give. Right. And then it just gets obnoxious because who can give the biggest or the whatever. And so we put together this thing where they could only spend $15 on each other. And because you had that constraint, there was so much creativity and thought and pieces together and what do I do and all that. So I love that when you're over there, you have this constraint of we have $150. Here's all the things that $150 can buy us. What sounds like the most fun? Because that's awesome, right? That teaches you okay, we have these resources that are limited in whatever pursuits we're doing. And you have to be conscientious of how you want to spend those. And when you look at the opportunity that they provide versus the constraint that they can provide, it just puts you in an entirely different mindset. I love it.
And it makes the kids self-responsible to their own happiness in a way. I think it's really sad we don't give our kids enough options. If they're in a traditional life, going to school, even kids start, I want to play soccer, but then it becomes, well, you have to make it to practice and you have to perform this way. All these have-tos. A good example, right before I was doing this, I had to tell my son, hey, you have to stop playing the piano. I've never once asked him to play the piano. He just sees an instrument, picks it up, teaches himself, and just plays, because it's all self-driven. Because they don't have the constraint of you have to, and it shifts to you get to, so choose, be creative. What do you want? The only constraint I kind of kept was that one, we eat really healthy. So you can't go and buy a bunch of donuts. You can have a donut after surf if you want, but there are constraints. I mean, I am pretty authoritarian when it comes to food and to no video game, really no video games. They might occasionally play it if they were at a friend's house or something, but that doesn't happen. They don't have.
I know. I'm sitting there thinking, if I gave my kids the option of $150, how much of that would be spent on Robux? Right? Right. I would have to be, okay, not only do we only have $150, we have zero internet. So now what are we going to do with $150?
Yeah, exactly. There was definitely, that part was a huge transition. It's not to say that I'm I'm just such the fun mom. There were a lot of constraints in there, and that's okay. That was just my choice, but it was the options given. I thought, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing with it.
Okay. So what is your husband's job that allows you to do all this? Because that's got to be a key component.
For a lot of the years, we opened this was another yes dear moment. When I first started dating my husband, I was 17. He was 19. We opened a business when I was 20. When I was 17, I started a gymnastics program for the city of Coronado. And within a year or two, I was like, geez, I've built up this program. You guys should pay me better. To which they said, no way. This is our budget. We don't pay you more than this. Well, I'll just open up a business. And I go look at my husband hey, you should just run this business with me. And he handed me his gold card and said, yes, dear. Sure, dear. And so we opened a gymnastics facility when I was 20. And we brought our kids to work with us. And it was great, but it was also limiting. We got to a point, or I got to a point where I'm well, this isn't I want more than just to teach gymnastics forever. And in the process of teaching gymnastics, we actually, when we opened that business to make the numbers go, we bought 10 spin bikes. That was when spinning had just come on the market. I had never taken a spin class, but I just knew math enough and knew the numbers. I'm like, well, we need another revenue stream. Let's do this. And so we had a personal training business also along the way. And so at first, when we were traveling, we would save up. We'd run the business, save up, have somebody cover our classes. We'd travel. We kept going back and forth. And then it got to be where we could save up bigger chunks and then go back and forth. Sometimes we'd stationary RV in San Diego, and it was great for surfing. But I get every trip away from San Diego, it got more and more painful for me to go back to that kind of energy. Like you just feel city energy is so heavy. And I would say, I don't know how much more I could do this. So in 2017, we went to Hawaii, Bali, and New Zealand. And I told him, I said, look, when we land, I refuse to go back to San Diego. And so we went up to Bend, Oregon to try to have him start a business there. Total failure. It was awful. It was not good for him at all. We ended up going to Breckenridge, and then he tried there. We get to Breckenridge, and all of my older kids who were at the time 15, no, because my third would have been 14. It was a big deal. My oldest 3, so they must have been 18, 17, and 14, somewhere around there. And my 14-year-old was first to get a job. She gets hired at a coffee shop within like 2 days. And
that's awesome.
She made the most amount of money of all of us while we were there.
Oh my gosh.
We're we had zeroed out our bank account multiple times along all of this. I always trust, it's going to work out. If I lead with my heart, we should bullet point this. If I lead with my heart and my heart's in the right space, this is good for not just me, but for my kids. And apparently it wasn't good enough for my husband at the time, but he was done. He was having trouble at this point.
Well, that's a lot though. That's a lot to recover from and reset from and still keep that positive outlook. So walk me through how did we navigate through these emotions and stay connected?
Well, I can go really deep into this. Now, this is pretty much how we make money, is helping people overcome their programming. But at the time, so he was just a personal trainer, great in person, no business skills outside of trying to figure out online. And this was 3 years before 2020, where everybody's now learned how to adapt to online. But at the time, it was so foreign. And I think we just kept getting to this point, you have to want to grow forward. I think I would constantly be we don't want to go back to San Diego. What is on the other side? There's no self-growth for us there. There's nothing bigger. I know that. I didn't know Joe Dispenza or know of Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza at the time, but you know how he always talks about that everything is in the unknown. And I naturally had that craving for as long as I can remember, that in the unknown is where the answer lies. So I've always wanted to pursue that. So for me to go back to San Diego, I'm I know everything's known for me there. I know exactly the surf break. I know the people. I know the job. There's no self-growth. And I was chasing newness, and I needed that. So that's how we navigated it, was hey, we have to grow. And he'd be well, I want to, but I have I can't. And there was a time, I don't want to make this too long, but he did go back at some point when we were in Breckenridge and just threw in the towel. I'm you guys can stay here in Breckenridge. I can't. I have to go back. I don't know how to do this. I know, it's the book, Who Moved My Cheese? He's I know it's old cheese, but that's all I can do right now. And so we all eventually followed him back, and everything's we talked about at the beginning. It's you dip your toe in the water and you adapt, and then you change. And we had to hit a reset there for a little while. And I guess I'm thankful for 2020 because it kind of forced him out of that old cheese finally. And sometimes you just have to be patient.
2020 forced us out of a lot of things. If we all, right? It's oh, wow, what am I doing? I mean, it was a big wake up for a lot of us, which is a blessing on so many levels for a lot of people that I've met with. So
I think so. I always tell my kids, because I have three of them are adults now, and they're pursuing great things, but sometimes it doesn't come to fruition fast enough. And I always tell them, like, as if you have a wide enough lens, if you get far enough from the situation, you always, always, always look back with gratitude for it. But at the moment, sometimes it feels devastating, sad, frustrating. But you, at some point, you get far enough from the time that you go, oh, I see why that worked that way. And again, like, as long as they're leading with their heart from their truest intention, highest desire, it always works out.
Agreed. Okay, so 2020 happens and now you're back in California at this point. And then now the business online starts going stronger and bigger, or?
He didn't have, like, luckily, I mean, I'm so anti what Newsom did, but luckily he got closed. His gym got closed and he couldn't work there anymore. And it wasn't like overnight decision. He kept trying to find a way to make that happen. But me personally was at another breaking point that I just, the beaches were closed. Even the campground we were in, they wouldn't let our kids play on the grass together, or like other kids in the campground. And I was like, well, on May the 4th, I'm leaving, Victor. You can come with me or not. You can fly out and meet me, but I refuse to stay in San Diego. This is not living. And so I left with the kids on May the 4th. And then for a while, he just flew back and forth. And it was weird because he'd fly and meet me places, and it would take 72 hours for him to reset. And then I'd be like, oh, there's my husband. I missed you. I love you. But the energy field from being in a big city, it just took a long time to shed that. And from 2020 on, we pretty much just circled Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, South Dakota, a lot of time in South Dakota. And you're just in the open air. You're connecting with nature. Your head's a little bit clearer. So that was a big, but we were also worried. Like, I'll admit, I hit the panic button in 2020 in terms of fear and resources, and felt like, okay, we need defendable land. A lot of people went through that phase in 2020, like defendable land. So my uncle had a piece of property in Montana, and he said, oh, do you want to rent it? It was affordable. So my husband thought, okay, yeah, we can do that. And I can just Zoom all my clients that are in San Diego now. So he transitioned that way. He pretty much maintained his clientele, putting up screens in the gym, doing it that way, while simultaneously another miracle kind of happened for us. One, I thought, oh, homesteading, it's going to be so great. Within like 2 months of homesteading, I looked at my husband and I'm like, if I stay on this piece of property, communism wins. And I refuse to live. I've been to China once. It was the worst experience ever. So I was like, I can't stay here, but I can use it as a home base and we can bounce back. We can come back and forth. Well, the miracle that happened for us in that house is we were on like 60 acres and no one around us. Our family would sit and do yoga and meditate together every day. And while that was a little bit normal for me, and even most of my kids would go to yoga with me up before then, they were used to already having a good meditative practice or mindfulness practice. It was the first time for my husband to not be a workaholic and to not be stuck in like distractions with everybody, with what's going on. Like, he's a very giving person. So he usually finds ways to wrap his time up in giving to others or helping others.
Well, it's an easy thing to do, and it's a notable thing to do. So it's harder to diagnose because, I mean, I know for a while in my life, I was lost in my kids, and who could ever punish you for that? How could you be addicted to your children? But you really can, because it happens. I was there.
Yeah. And so he started to kind of unravel in like standing on his mat. He started to kind of go like, oh, wait, there's more to me than I realize. Oh, wait, all of these things that you keep telling me through travel, I'm starting to notice that they might, like outsourcing your energy and outsourcing your attention to the, I call it 3D world, as opposed to tapping into what your soul wants or who you are or what's going on the subconscious. And then another great thing happened to us is, so he was already kind of onto this, like, oh, there's more to me than I realized, but not enough that he could transfer it into, say, work. And so what would happen is I would go on trips with the kids a lot of times by myself, and he'd stay back. And then that would kind of push him back into the vortex of, he had a lot of trauma growing up, sexual abuse and scary events happening to him. So his root chakra was constantly being re-triggered in our travels, when I would leave. Another person that we read up a lot on is Dr. Gabor Mate, who talks about, like, if you didn't get good at the right attachment as a kid, you become either a defense mechanism of aloof, or there's all these things happening. So our travel kind of helped. It helped because it unraveled these things.
But yeah, it triggered, right? The travel like opened the wound to be healed.
And once it's open, now you got to okay, we got to stop the bleeding.
Unfortunately, you can't sew it up or pretend it's not there. When it's open, you're in.
Absolutely. And then we ended up in 2021 in July at this Music and Sky Festival. I wanted to go to, the kids were like, oh, let's go do this. This will be great. That's kind of a higher consciousness festival. And we did our first holotropic breathwork session. And let me tell you, that was it for him. Like, after doing that, he's like, oh yeah, okay, I need to go deeper down this rabbit hole. And now he pretty much, he still has his clients from San Diego, but he also, well, we both do, but he does a little bit more of it, of guiding people through holotropic breathwork and trying to help heal and access all the deeper sense of self.
So is that how the Be the Hero Academy was born?
Well, that was probably more from my daughters and I, because while he does do still some breath work there, we've been kind of lucky that so I have an oldest son that's currently 23. My oldest daughter's 22. My next daughter's 19. And then I have a son that's 14 and a daughter that's 12. Because from so long, mindfulness and mindset has been an integral part of their upbringing. Gabby and Isabel, the 19 and 22-year-old, have been with me like shoulder to shoulder, pursuing a deeper sense of self. Like, we're the ones who've always been rock climbing and doing these crazy hikes and pursuing the next extreme adventure that naturally, I'm sure you feel this too, naturally you start to get very in touch with who you are, what your purpose here is in life. And then my 19-year-old was very into personality typings like Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, astrology. And so it's kind of weaving in just how we've looked at approaching our own hero's journey and then trying to teach it to other people.
I like it. I mean, and even when you go onto your website, you can sign up to get the free book and the breath work and all the pieces to it. So of Be the Hero Academy, what component do you feel is the most important for somebody starting on that journey?
Writing your story up until now. I think we don't realize how much. I was doing a meditation with a client this morning, and I default to this one a lot because it's so true. We don't realize that we are our own boat. We're driving our own boat. And if we look back, there's a wake coming off of the boat. But we think or we act, not necessarily intentionally, but that wake is driving our boat. Everything that's happened in our past, we let kind of dictate where our boat is going in the future. And I really think that with everything we've done with travel, adventure sports, in our relationships, it's really more about, okay, that wake is there. Look at it with curiosity, look at it with like reverence maybe, but it has nothing to do with where you're going now. You really have to just set your focus on where you want to go.
Ooh, I like this analogy. This is a good one.
And so being able to see where you want to direct the boat, and we can add the boat. Like, if anyone's driven a boat, you know how loose that steering wheel is. So you do have to constantly be shifting a little left, a little bit right, but you have to be looking forward at where you want to go and not let that past be dictating. So a lot of times when I'll do meditations with people, I always start with gratitude, like own that boat, own where you're sitting right now. Like if something had been different, your life might be, I could sit and complain about all the negative things that have happened in our travels, but I don't. Like, it's all happening for me to learn from. And so, yeah, know your path. You can't see it, admire that wake behind you. Like, oh, wow, this happened and it got me here. Offload that. And then you can start into being a creator, because we live in such a victim society, and it's like society wants you to dwell on that wake. They want you to find some element of that wake that you can blame. but really we're creators of anything. I mean, my husband and I have really struggled financially through all of this because I'm guilty of just being it was so much about my physical, not even accomplishments, but just being physically involved in my life every day and being really present with my kids, that it's hard to balance. Like, I'm not going to be a victim to like my inability to promote coaching or do things like that, but it takes a lot of time. You only have so many hours in the day. And for a long time, I just chose like my kids are my number one priority and my own healing process, to be able to not be a victim to like what's happened in the past. And it's kind of nice to be at this point in my life where I feel like I can give back now, or give to more than just my kids.
Yeah, no, you definitely are. And so this program people can sign up for, and there's different levels, coaching, one-on-one, and it's a monthly subscription.
Yes, it's a monthly subscription. People can join the first week for free and join us there are so many workshops on there. So one of the best ones is values. My daughter, Gabby, the one who's 22, that one is about like you really want to own your intrinsic values, to be the hero of your own story. How you approach your day, your life, your goals needs to come from really an intrinsic value. Like for me, it was about newness, and I wanted to see what I was capable of. It wasn't necessarily the achievement part. So we get caught up in the extrinsic, and I was very guilty of that. The extrinsic, I was always straight A student, get the scholarships, have my child on the best soccer team. All of those are extrinsic rewards. But the problem with that is that when we can have some extrinsic rewards, but if we're always tied up to that, then there's always going to be another mountain to climb, right? There's always
No, exactly. It's so easy, and it's hard because it's so rewarding, right? The society reinforces these extrinsic rewards, and really just giving yourself the space to pull away and check in. Am I living my values, or am I living my purpose? Do I need to get an A in everything? Or can I say, I want to be a C- person here so I can be an A+ person there and show up consistently as my best self, instead of running at max till I crash and burn, recharge, running at max till I crash and burn and recharge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then we can pull to the other extreme where we allow mediocrity, or, not even pursuing goals, becoming more nihilist. And that's another end of the spectrum where we don't even like step in to see what could we achieve, and finding that balance. I guess I should add, as a key part of my journey was in 2012, I read the book Happier by Tal Ben-Shahar. Do you know that book?
I do know that book.
I would say that was my life-changing moment. If I had to pick, I mean, I've had a lot of them, but that one book just made all the difference, because it was already something that I felt deep inside of me, that balance between, I would have been so easily the rat racer, pursue everything for the future, so future oriented, that for me, it was good because travel drew me into the present. Oh, wait, I can be happy today. My husband was the other end. He was like deferred. He wasn't had really any goals. He was just like, get through the day, suffer as much as possible, outsource all my happiness to other people's happiness. So I had to pull him. So we were on these like two extremes, and we had to kind of like compress back together, and we find a way to like we're getting way better at it. It's not perfect. And we have moments that it's like, wait, we have to reset. What was going to be present day happiness and future happiness. And that's it. A lot of Be the Hero too is about understanding your personality type, because do you know your Enneagram?
Tell me what the 8 is.
The 8 is the challenger. The 3 is the achiever. The 1 is the perfectionist.
Okay.
Those are the only 3 I would give you to choose from.
I feel definitely, it's like the wings too. There's wings there or something. I feel I definitely gravitate in different settings to different ones. And I don't know if I've done it well enough where I've been able to lock into what that is.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to box you in by picking one. So it would just be, the good thing is once you kind of know.
Once you know, then you're like, oh, this is my unhealthy version of me showing up. right? Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And it helps me have like a North Star. Like I'm an 8, so I know my growth is to step more into a 2 and a 5, the healthy versions of those. And so I have to catch that. It's actually easy for me to step into my 2 because I just think of being a mom and nurturing and giving. But then sometimes I have to step into a healthy part of a 5. And with each one that's a healthy or an unhealthy, a 5 can be unhealthy in, I need all these resources, kind of like what I felt in 2020. I need to get ammo and have tons of food stocked up and all these things. Or it could be like, hey, research some information so that you can meet people at where they're at, basically. Like for me, that's a bit, I can just easily go, oh, you should just trust me, trust my intuition. I can just see these things. And then I go, oh, wait, I have to do the research and be able to meet people at where they are. So yeah, by knowing your Enneagram, that's a big part of what we do in Be the Hero. Talk about that. And for your kid too. All 5 of my kids, totally different Enneagrams. That means I communicate.
Isn't that funny how each person is their own person? I mean, I figured at 7 children, I'd have a repeat. There are no repeats. Everybody is their own unique human. And it is so fun watching them do life in their own little way.
Yeah. And we go to like Myers-Briggs, and then that's how your brain functions and knowing how you process information. And now Isabel, with her we really do Be the Hero Academy or Be the Hero YouTube, all 3 of us together. But I say it's Isabel's because she just is like at the forefront of it. And she has all these astrology videos. And I remember thinking like, astrology, come on. Like, that's your reading your horoscope. I don't know if I believe in that. But then I've learned so much about how Mercury is your communication and Mars is how you take action and North Node is your path to growth. And I look at it and I'm like, this is kind of true. This is so neat. And so then there's these things that I don't like to box people in with it. It's just more of like, it gives you a roadmap. You kind of have.
Yeah. No, I agree. I like doing it just because it lets me say, oh, is this showing up? Or it puts language to feelings or thoughts. And once you have language around something, it feels easier to solve or navigate or like communicate and work through.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess the final element of that is that, and granted, I did all of these travels just outside of this stuff. Like I didn't know any of this stuff beforehand, but like you said, it puts words to emotions. I just knew the emotion I was chasing. And I just happened to be the 8 who just knocks down walls that are in front of me and goes like, well, I want to do it this way. I'm going to do it this way. And one of the things though is around 2020, we learned a lot about chakras. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool because this is kind of what I was feeling, but I didn't have a word to put onto it. Like, oh, that's a sacral chakra issue, or that's a throat chakra issue. And I really do feel like that's kind of my talent is I can look at a person from an energetic stance and go, oh, you have this heart chakra blockage because of this wound. And we can open up. It's almost like what we would do for healing an injury. Like if you had an elbow injury, we could look at the wrist and the shoulder. It's kind of like from your energetic being. You can go like, wow, you have this heart chakra blockage and it's playing out in a throat chakra blockage that's causing you to have a thyroid issue. This is crazy. We can just work on opening up your heart chakra and then the thyroid issue would go away. And that was kind of a big eye opener for me in 2020 when I learned that. I'm like, whoa, this all makes sense now. I knew I wasn't just my body.
I can connect the dots. Yay. There's so much clarity. I love it. Okay. So where are you traveling now? Are you like more like it looks like you're in a house.
Funny story. I am in a house. These are our friends that about 8 months ago, they reached out to us they weren't friends at the time. They reached out to us for coaching because they wanted to launch into full-time RVing, but couldn't quite do it. And so my husband's been doing a lot of breath work with them to try to clear out the trapped energy that's basically keeping you stuck in doing something you want to do, but you just can't get yourself to do it. And so, yeah, we're doing sessions and then we're traveling through skiing. They're like, come stay with us for a few days while you go skiing. And so now it's kind of cool. We're doing in person, like we've been doing everything online with them. And now we're in person for the week and trying to help them heal everything that needs to be healed so that they can launch into their travels and go live life to the fullest. So yeah, that's how I ended up just by coincidence in a house. But we're out traveling. We're probably going to surf as soon as ski season fully ends. And
If it ever ends this year, I'm not sure if it will.
After spring skiing, for me, it's over after this week because I have done the spring skiing. It is not fun, I think, but
No, and everybody's getting injured. So just because there's still snow does not mean it's safe snow. Okay. It's like it changes. It is. It's so dangerous right now. I agree. Everybody's getting injured.
okay, that's good to know that it's not just me.
Yeah. So get on that surfboard. It's time. It's time. I give you permission. I love it. All right. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. And your number one piece of advice is write your story. That's where you start. And then we can find you at Be the Hero Academy and get some assistance with our journey. So thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for inspiring women to be brave and bold and go summit those mountains. It's really amazing. We need all the role models we can get for our youth.
Yes, 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 friends. Step into that mountain. Let's take it on.